Hi, good morning. Thanks for joining this morning or for watching the video later. I hope that everyone is well, no matter where you are or what day it is. So if you are here and you have a question, please put it in the chat and I will do my best to answer it. We can have a discussion. So I'll just wait a little minute to see if anybody has a question. Pardon me. So it's in Buddhism. Hey Tim, what question do you have for me this morning, Tim? In Buddhism, questions are respected and encouraged, as opposed to some other systems where one is expected to believe everything and take everything just based on faith. Hey Melina, good morning. Um, in Buddhism, we encourage healthy skepticism and are encouraged to ask questions while the teacher is there so that we can be sure of what we're doing, especially if we're doing a practice, so that we're sure about, how to do the practice. We need to ask questions and make sure that we understand everything. So I'm waiting for for any questions before we begin. Everybody knows everything about Buddhism. They don't have a question. Why am I here? I don't know. Everybody knows everything already. All right, well, we'll begin questionless. So let's start by just bringing the mind and body together so we're not running around all over the place like normal. So just bring the mind into the body, into the present moment. Take a few breaths. Sanda Sangarab Shiri Sempema Debani Shuna Susonak Nata Pinkasaso Katana Manamaso Water. Omin Chagin Kipo Jane Dusun Sange Quinking one near on some sugar no sunta sefa, so in a mesha plus water. Okay, pardon me, I gotta adjust. Okay, all right, so I'm going to start with our bodhicitta motivation. Bodhicitta is literally means awakened mind heart. Um, But the definition is the wish to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. Bodhicitta arises out of compassion when we see the suffering of others and we want to remove that suffering. So that's the compassion part. Um, that's the compassion part. And then the wisdom part is knowing the cause of suffering, which is very deep and fundamental unknowing, very deep and fundamental ignorance called Marikpa, which misunderstands the nature of the self and the nature of reality. So the way to overcome that is by attaining enlightenment. In addition, attaining enlightenment gives us inconceivable skills uh, in order to benefit an inconceivable number of beings. So it's not even close to what we could do as the most kind-hearted person in the whole world. They're going to be still very limited. So um, let's try to develop that motivation for the time that we're going to spend together this morning. If that sounds too much for you, that's fine. At least think, may the time we spend together this morning benefit others as well as myself. So let's take a moment to do that. Okay. So, okay. So, question is Saturday morning when your brain is mush and there's no coffee, no coffee, the horror. What are the most important things to remember in terms of Dharma? Asking for a friend, then I am that friend. Um, say the most important things to remember regarding the Dharma are compassion and wisdom. These are the two main factors. And bodhicitta. Hi, Lean, stranger. Hi. Um, bodhicitta is the basis for everything. So we really need to do our best to work on bodhicitta. And as I just said, that is the combination of compassion and wisdom. We normally start out on the path, most people, with a self-focused goal, right? Which is, it's not a failing, okay? It's just normal. We come to Buddhism or we come to meditation at least with the goal for ourselves, right? We want to be more clear, or we want to be more relaxed, we want to lower our blood pressure, or I don't know, all kinds of reasons, but it's usually focused on the self. I don't know that anybody um, comes to meditation or Buddhism for the first time with the thought of benefiting others. So we need to start there. So bodhicitta, compassion, wisdom, and awareness. Awareness is developed through meditation. By working with the mind, we learn to recognize more quickly um, when our mind has gone astray, when we're completely distracted, and when we are aware. That in turn supports compassionate action, because a lot of the times when we're not acting in a compassionate way, it's not because we want someone else to suffer. It's not that we have this active, um, I mean, sometimes we do, quite frankly, if we're angry with someone, but a lot of times it's just sort of casual. Shanta Davis says something like that. Casual, I don't know, like out of unawareness, right? It's not that we're wanting purposely to harm someone. It's just that we're wanting to protect ourselves. Like we're not even thinking about that person. And that's the problem. And so lack of awareness, even if we're trying to practice compassion, if we don't have awareness, that's going to be hobbled, right? Another really important point is integration. Really, there's no point at all, or almost at all. I will say there's some point because at least you make a connection, but there's little sense, let's say, in meditating and going to teachings, reading books, talking about Buddhism, doing classes, whatever. There's not much point to any of that if we're not integrating the teachings. And this can be, depending on the person, I guess, this can be extraordinarily difficult because it's tricky, right? Um, because we have in our mind uh, the teachings, right? So, in a sense, we just by having them in our mind, we can think we're practicing them. You know what I mean? If we're not aware, right? Well, I did such and such a class, and I met such and such a lama, and I did this and that retreat, this kind of thing. But that's useless unless we are actually integrating those teachings. Okay. What does that mean, integrating the teachings? That means if the teachings are, you know, something very basic, like show compassion to others, then we have to show compassion to others. So we have to be aware of where our mind is at, what words are coming out of our mouth, what our actions are, right? And we have to have the courage to really see what we're doing, okay? This kind of self awareness and brutal honesty is essential, not to put ourselves down, not to have low self esteem, not at all, but just to be honest, which I think a lot of us are lacking. Yeah. To be honest, oh, I really don't have much compassion, or I really shouldn't have said that. If I was putting the teachings into practice, I would not have said that. Or I really do have to practice, like it's not a joke, you know, these kind of things, rather than sort of skating along the surface, of the Dharma and just being like, oh, yeah, but that person was really mean to me, or yeah, but I don't feel like practicing. I'm tired, or I'd rather play this game or sleep or whatever. That's BS. That's BS. And if we don't solve that, if we don't pay attention to that, we're really never going to get anywhere. So if we are sincere about wanting to progress on the path, we have to be willing to take criticism from our teachers and also from ourselves. Again, in a healthy way, right? Not to be like, oh, I'm the worst, and beat ourselves up with our mala, not like that, because that's not helpful either, right? And that is actually labeled a form of laziness. To have low self-esteem, isn't that funny? It's considered a form of laziness because it allows us to not practice. Yeah, it's an excuse to not practice. Oh, I can't. I'm the worst. I'm never going to get anywhere. Why should I even try? So I'm not going to practice. I'm going to go watch TV or whatever, right? We need that. We need that. We need to steel ourselves for that. Steel, Steel, right? To be strong, to be humble, and willing to realize that we might not be perfect. We might have faults that, maybe we should work on these faults. Because also, if we don't, if we're either ignoring them because we don't want to face it, or because we don't want to work on it, or we don't recognize it, or our mind is like somewhere in the future, right? That's my goal, it's over there, or we have a feeling of like I should be better, I should know this, I should be able to handle this, this kind of talk um is useless again because we have to recognize, like, be where we are, start where we are. This is where we are, and sometimes it takes a lot of humility. If we have been um if we have been especially if we've been practicing or in the Dharma in some capacity for many years, it can be very difficult, to realize that in some ways we're just a rank beginner, you know. And we say, okay, you know, I'm a rank beginner. That's where I'm at. All right, let's let's go from there. Because if we're constantly just in some kind of dream world about where we want to be, where we should be, and we don't want to face things, and we're not aware, and all these, we have no compassion and no bodhicitta, etc. Oh, we're not going to get anywhere, man. And just being around the Dharma, it's not going to mean much, It just isn't. It just isn't. You know. And I tell this story, told this story more than once, but in my second 3-year retreat, I don't know what we were doing at that particular time in the retreat, but I was feeling very sad because that's my second 3-year retreat. Okay, so by that time, I had been in the Dharma for, I don't know, 15 years roughly, and had already ordained. Um, and I was just doing that. It was just like being honest with myself, and I was like, actually, I have no compassion at all. I really don't. I don't care about, ultimately, I don't care about anybody but myself, you know. And I felt really almost just broken by that, really sad about that, really disappointed. I was like, all these years, and you still can't even drum up just some compassion, you know? So it's really sad. And Rinpoche had shown up unexpectedly, and I happened to be outside of my room at the time. So I saw him, and, I don't know, gave a teaching or something probably in the temple. And then I was seeing him out the door, and he said, how are you doing, Pomo? And I didn't want to bother him with this because I'd learned by then, at least, that all the answers are in the teachings. All the answers that you need are already there. You just have to look for them, remember them, study them. There's a saying, I don't know if it's was just said in retreat or what, but we we did say sometimes, all the answers are on the cushion, meaning just sit and do your practice and the answers will be there. They will come. So I was thinking that, and I know Rinpoche is like so busy all the time, and people are always, trying to get a piece of him and, sucking up his time and coming to him with small problems and coming to him with big problems. And I was just like, I just need to just suck it up and, look at the teachings, do my practice, the answer will come. So I said, I'm fine, And he turns around because he was walking in front of me. And he turns around and he just goes, "How are you, Pomo?" Like that. And I was like, okay, he really, must have seen something. So I said, well, I'm really not doing well, uh, because, I realized I was looking for some compassion, in my heart, and my heart is just stone ultimately. And I just feel terrible about that, And he said, "Oh, that's really good," which is like the last thing you would expect to hear in that situation, right? "Oh, that's really good." He said, "Now the journey can begin," right? Start where you are, recognize where you are, and go from there. Otherwise, you're not even walking the path. He didn't say now the journey can continue. Now the journey, whatever, is nearly done. No, now the journey can begin. Then he told a story of someone in a neighboring town who had, I guess, stabbed his wife and then got a gun and shot her a bunch of times. And it's like that guy didn't know anything. That guy had no idea what was going on in his mind, you know. Not to mention having, zero compassion and all those other things I just mentioned. So we should celebrate when we face where we're at. And I just found that answer immensely comforting, which may sound counterintuitive, but I found it comforting because there's no playing games. This the thing that is just one of the best things about Buddhism. There's no playing games, it's very realistic. And there's a kind of security in that aspect of being realistic, right? You know, Rinpoche didn't say, "Oh, there, Pomo. No, you're the best. You're great," which I know isn't true. Or, "Don't worry about it. It doesn't matter," which I know isn't true. I don't want him to be my best friend or my daddy, you know? I want him to be my teaching, my teacher. I want him to be my guide. And if someone is your teacher and your guide, uh, they're not always going to be patting you on the back or patting you on the head and saying they're there, right? And it wasn't abusive, it wasn't insulting, it was very encouraging, okay, accepting the truth, or my truth anyway, and saying, okay, now you can actually begin to practice. So, looking at the comments, hey, Tess and Lucy, took you from that wonderful pithy teaching from Rinpoche to developing. What was the bridge? Oh, what took you from that actually developing the patient? What was the bridge? I don't know. I'm going to read the question again because I think if you listen, I'm reading it, but it, it doesn't show up in the recording. And anyway, the question again is, what took you from that wonderful pithy teaching from Rinpoche to actually developing compassion? What was the bridge? Um, I don't know. I mean, I think that his answer just made me relax, and realize that this whole thing is a process. Um, and I definitely, like, no question, still need so much work on generating compassion, you know? That's the other thing I think about this path is like we can't expect, and I don't think that's what you're saying, Melina, but we can't expect to change overnight or to have, you know, a teaching like that and then suddenly everything changes. The path is small, incremental steps, right? That's another reason why it's important to do our formal practice every day and to always be trying to put the teachings into practice, whether we're in a formal situation or we're just living our life, because the process is slow and the process is incremental. So it's also good to be aware of, your own improvement and to recognize and celebrate that, right? So that you can encourage yourself to keep going. So that's a matter of, realizing, let's say you've been through some argument or something, and then you realize, like, okay, well, that I didn't handle that perfectly, but I did a lot better than I would have done last year or 2 years ago or 5 years ago or whatever it is, and recognizing, oh, that's cool, this is progress. I think another important point of this practice is guru devotion. Um, if we have a teacher, if we're fortunate enough to have a capital T teacher, not someone like myself who is, just struggling along. Um, someone like Tugu Rinpoche, Jimmy Kins Rinpoche, Sakya Chichen Rinpoche, and so many of these lamas. Um, having that relationship is really, really important, you know, um, because it's not something that we can do on our own. It's not something we can do without a teacher, without guidance, walking along this path. It always cracks me up, to see people just saying, like, yes, we're Americans. We don't need a lama. We don't need a teacher. We don't need a guru, man. We're just going to do it on our own. We're just like, okay, like you needed somebody to teach you how to wipe your bum. So I don't know why you wouldn't need a teacher to guide you on one of the most challenging things we can do as human beings. You know, everything we do from eating to speaking, writing, whatever we've learned, someone has taught us. If someone has to teach us how to play the piano, of course someone has to teach us to, you know, walk down this path. So we should make every effort to find a teacher um, as soon as possible, because the teachers are impermanent and our precious human life is impermanent, and life itself is impermanent. Things change all the time. And people have a tendency to think, we have all the tendency to think we have all kinds of time, you know, and that's just not true. It's just not true. Um, so, how do you find a teacher then? You have to make effort, you got to make effort. Like, things, sometimes we're fortunate and it's just like a teacher appears like that out of nowhere, that's great, but that's not always going to happen, you know. So we should search. We should search. Like there's Psychiatries and Ricochet and Jimmy Ricochet are going to be in New York next month. Should make every effort we can to go there if possible, to meet them, to have some kind of connection with them. Some of us are fortunate enough to be able to go to France in August to see Ricochet and Jimmy Ricochet, receive teachings from them. We should do that if we can. We should definitely do that if we can. You know, if that's, look for other teachers like Rob John Bichet, for example. He's going to be in New York in June, I think, maybe for a day. Conjure Bichet is a female lama. She's has a place also in upstate New York. I think it's upstate New York. I think it's called Lotus Garden. Anyway, I think she comes fairly regularly. I don't know, I've been out of touch for a long time. But, try to find someone, look online. YouTube has a bunch of videos, a bunch of websites. Make sure you don't fall prey to charlatans. But apart from that, you should be busting your butt to find these people. Tess says in July. He's there in July. Okay, July. So a teacher can show us when we're going off the path. A teacher can show us when we're um, getting somewhere, so to speak. A teacher can point out our faults, which, like, our friends aren't going to do that, otherwise they wouldn't be our friends anymore. But, we need that. We need to have the humility to accept that and to look at it. And if we're not sure, well, why would they say or do such and such, then we should take some time to examine it ourselves. Oh, this must be the reason, and then do what we can to improve. That's how it's not magic, I wish that it were. I'm sure all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas wish that they could just wave a magic wand and enlighten everyone, but it doesn't work that way. We have to do the work, We have to understand this requires effort, joyful effort. And that joy comes from recognizing that the goal, this enlightenment, is going to benefit us and others in immeasurable ways, free from suffering once and for all, Rinpoche says. Once and forever, I think is what he says. Yeah. I mean, what is better than that? Nothing. What is more beneficial than that? Nothing, nothing. So why do we think that it shouldn't require any effort, that it should just be easy? We should just be able to lay around and have it fall upon our head. And it doesn't work that way. So those were some of the points I think that are most important to remember about the Dharma, you know, that are not always easy, but always important. Yeah. All right, so let's do some meditation. We'll just do mindfulness of breathing practice. So I know that everybody here knows very well how to do it, but for those of you watching now or later who might not know, I'll give you the install. So want to start by, if you're sitting on your bed or on a cushion on the floor, just cross your legs in whatever way is comfortable for you. If you're sitting in a chair, just put your feet flat on the floor in front of you. Otherwise, all these instructions are the same. So your hands should be palms down on your legs, or palms like that, resting in your lap, or with your fingers on top and your thumbs touching like that in your lap. And your arms are relaxed, so you're not holding them in, you're not holding them out, just relaxed. The back should be straight, again, but relaxed, meaning, you're not like you're in the army standing like that yet, just straight. Spine should be straight. Back of the neck also straight. Okay. Shoulders should be back a little bit. They say like a vulture, which I don't know, I've never seen a vulture, but shoulders should be back a little bit like that. And you'll see right away if you do that even once, opens up the chest. So chin is tucked in, mouth is closed but relaxed, tongue resting on the roof of the mouth. You're breathing through the nose. Ideally, your eyes are open, looking down in front of you, relaxed, lowered gaze, unfocused gaze. So that's what we're doing with the body because it supports the mind in meditation. Okay. Okay. Sorry, I just had to check some settings. All right. What are we doing with the mind? We are bringing the attention to sensation of the breath coming in and out of the nose. So take a moment to just notice that. Okay. Okay. So the aim here is to maintain as best we can continuous awareness of that sensation without getting distracted. So let's do that just for a moment. Okay, so I hope you understand the process. Um, all right, so let's begin that now. You have the posture, focusing on the breath. If you get distracted, no big deal, just bring the mind back to the breath. So please begin that now. Pardon me. Okay, now begin to count the breaths, counting either every in breath or every out breath for a total of 10 breaths. The counting helps us to realize more quickly when we've gotten distracted because we'll have lost count. So if you find yourself at 3 or 4 or whatever, and then your mind just goes running off in another direction, as soon as you realize that and that you've lost count, just bring the mind back gently, gently, bring the mind back and start again at 1. If you get to 10 without getting distracted, don't let that fact distract you. Just go back to 1 and start again. So please begin that now. Bring your mind back to the breath. If you're feeling very speedy, um, sort of hyper, there are things you can do to calm the mind down momentarily. You can close your eyes, make the room darker, warmer, put on a sweater, and put your hands in. I'm sorry if you're sleepy. Did I say hyper? Hyper. if you're a hyper, do those things and put your hands in this position. So this, all of that has a tendency to kind of relax. Then when you feel more regulated, just um, open your eyes and continue your meditation as usual. If, on the other hand, you're feeling really dull and sleepy, then you want to look up or look out the window. You can make your body cooler, pardon, make the room cooler, take off a sweater, whatever. Put your hands in this position, which is kind of more formalized, and this will help just sort of uplift your energy. Okay. So only you can tell where you're at any given moment, um, and just it's up to you to keep your mind balanced in the practice. So please continue your meditation. Okay, now we can conclude the meditation. And we'll say the closing prayers. Pardon me. You can download them if you look at all the links below, it says a lot of important information. So we're going to say these prayers. I will share my screen with you. And then there's some announcements. So please don't run a couple of important announcements. Okay. We'll just say them in English. In the celestial realm, encircled by snow peaks, you are the source of every happiness and benefit. Tenzin Gyatso, Avalokiteshvara himself, may your lotus feet remain firm for 100 eons. Then below that, like Chigme Khyentse Rinpoche, Swasti, in the vast expanse of your fearless wisdom, shine the 100,000 cooling light rays of your all-pervading great love, dispelling the anguish of beings in this degenerate age. O supreme jewel of space, region of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, remain with us continuously, we pray. And Pema Wanka Rinpoche. Om Swasti, through dependent causation and the blessings of the infinity of long life deities, may Pema Wanka, prophesied magical emanation of the Taklin Sutra, be firm in body, speech, and mind like the king of the sounding drum, Amitabha. And may the great waves of his wishes for the teachings and beings spread out to their ultimate extent. Then all the teachers, we pray for the good health of the lamas. We pray for their precious lives to be long. We pray for their activities to spread and increase. May we be blessed, never depart from them. By this merit, may all attain omniscience, may defeat the enemy of wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of cyclic existence, may I free all beings. May bodhicitta, precious and sublime, arise where it does not yet come to be, and where it has arisen, may it never fail, but grow and flourish ever more and more. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may it too remain and dispel the miseries of the world. Ever absorbed in the display of divine forms and primordial awareness, appearance, sound, and perception in the state of divinities, mantras, and dharmakaya, may I, inseparable from the practice of the profound and secret great yoga, attain within the essence of mind the state of one taste. Now let's say the mantra. Om Vajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajra Sattva Tenupa Tishta Drito Me Bawa Suto Kayo Me Bawa Suto Kayo Me Bawa Anurato Me Bawa Sawa Siddhi Me Prayasa Sawa Karma Sutsame Shitam Shviyam Kuruhum Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Sawatatagata Patrana Me Mutsa Padre Bava Maha Samaya Sattva. All right, so a couple of announcements before we depart. Don't know what happened. I checked. Sorry, not understand where it went. Okay. All right. Well, I lost the chat. I don't know. There it is. Okay. Um. All right. So, 3 times a month we meet to do very beautiful sadhana called the Buddha sadhana. So for this month, the next one should be in about 8 days. Next one is, yes, this coming Friday at 6 p.m. So you can find everything you need to know about that. Actually, the next 2 Fridays at 6 p.m. we have the Buddha Sadhana. So if you just look on our website or follow the links below, you can find all the information, including the sadhana. I really encourage you to join. Rinpoche did ask us to do this together as a practice. So it would be great if you could join us, especially if you consider yourself a student of his. We are about to finish our class, Walking the Spiritual Path, and then start another class, Women in Buddhism. That is coming soon. I'm sorry to not have all the information out there yet, but it's coming soon. Meditation every Saturday on YouTube, and normally also the second Saturday of the month at Lakewood Public Library. Um, if you could make a donation, we so appreciate it. Of course, we understand if your finances don't allow, but every little bit is really helpful, and you can, again, find out how to do that below. Please like, subscribe, and comment on uh, our YouTube videos, as it helps to bring more people to us. So you can even just take a few minutes and go back through the past ones and make a little comment. Doesn't have to be anything profound, press like, press subscribe, etc. Share with friends and families, etc. Make sure you sign up for the newsletter. It's really important as well. Whoops, sorry about that. That's really important. That uh, is the best way to find out what's going on. And then I just want to talk about this dog that I fostered. Her name is Ginger, and she's still at the shelter waiting for her forever home. So if you would like a dog, or you know somebody who is open to having a dog, I recommend this dog. She's very sweet. She's very affectionate, as you can see. Uh, she's funny, she's just a great dog. She wants to be on top of you at all times. She has gained weight since this time, and that was one of the reasons I was fostering her. It's because she needed to put on some weight. So she has more meat on her bones now. There she is outside, and this is time, like this chair is pretty small, that she wants uppies at all times. So anyway, she couldn't face the day, I guess, this particular day. So anyway, she's at the, I should put it in the description. I'll do that today, but she's at the Cuyahoga County Animal Shelter, which is in Valley View, uh, Ohio. So you can look that up online. Um, and you can go and see her. I really recommend meeting her. She's like I said, she's just a sweetheart, and she needs to get out of there. She needs a forever home. So if you find it in your heart to give her that, or to recommend her to someone who can give her that, that would be awesome. Finally, I want to say thank you so much for joining us this morning, and have a great rest of your weekend.